And so this is what happens. You have past traumas, you have people that have hurt you, you get hurt, and unfortunately, you project that hurt sometimes onto your partner unintentionally.
There's not that moment of, I don't want to bring that into our relationship.
Right.
And I don't want that to lead, because when fear is leading in a relationship, it will continuously drive more and more fear. And ultimately, like you said, that can break a couple up. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals from all over the world, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. Today we have episode number 57. Don't take your past out on your partner. So we all have been in situations where we were unkind, lost our temper, couldn't emotionally regulate. Before we get into this episode, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Next Level Podcast Solutions as always. And sweetheart, take us away. What's your intention?
My intention for our listeners in this episode is to really help see how important it is for all of us. It's incredibly important to heal from your past so that you can create a bright future. And though we are not perfect in this by any means, we do aspire to, in this episode, help our listeners get one baby step closer to not taking their past out on their partners.
You look really beautiful today, sweetie.
Oh, thank you, love.
You're welcome.
As do you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Always. My beautiful man.
So sweetheart, you have a story that you wanted to share with everyone.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I got an audio from, and I'll keep this anonymous as always, because confidentiality is really important to me and my clients. But I got an audio from one of my clients recently, and it was really hard because there was crying and she was so upset. And this individual had just been broken up with by her partner. And unfortunately, in this scenario, what I came to learn really was that she ended up becoming her worst nightmare in a way. Meaning she ended up being that type of partner that she swore to herself she would never be. And the reason in which this individual got broken up with was because it was impacting the mental health of the relationship, the partner in the relationship. And my client, she's been there before, so she knows what that feels like. And she never, ever had intended on really wreaking that type of havoc on her relationship. And so it was really hard to hear, and we were working through it. And, ultimately, I think we've all been here in one way, shape, or form or another. Some of us maybe more often than not, but when we look at that, it's really a result of not doing that healing and not realizing how important it is to heal from the past and not bring that into other relationships when you start them. And, like I said, I'm not perfect in this regard either. It's hard to do that. It's hard to completely heal from your past so that you're not taking that past out on your partner. And sometimes we think we have healed 100%, right? The healing analogy, if you will. The truth is you'll be triggered every now and then with your partner because things will come up and you won't maybe know how to emotionally handle that. So the key here is, how can we heal from our past to be able to emotionally regulate so that whatever future we have with a partner, we're not taking that past out on them because they don't deserve that.
So before we prepared for this episode, I talked to Emilia and we agreed that we wanted to share this story in our relationship early on. Mm-hmm. So when Emilia and I were probably 2 or 3 months in, I had an executive admin. Her name's Amy Diaz. She still is my executive admin. Amy D, what's happening? And I was at her place. So we now do everything virtually because this was pre-COVID, actually.
Yeah.
And we used to every single Saturday or Sunday, I forget which day, we used to do an executive admin jam session where we'd get together and we'd hammer out a whole list of a whiteboard to-dos, and we would just crank. And one of the nights I was there pretty late, and this was pretty early in our relationship, and you had shared with me. So that night you didn't say anything, and I got home really late. I think it was like 1 or 2 a.m. or something like that because we were up late night working. And the next day you said, just so you know, I just want to share vulnerably with you. That was actually, you sent me an audio. That was actually really hard for me to have you with, at another woman's house, that late at night, because I've had past partners that were unfaithful. And I was like, holy crap, I had no idea. And I audioed you back and I said, sweetheart, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Like, next time, what would you want me to do? X, Y, Z. And in hindsight, it's actually interesting reflecting back because I went into fawning mode.
I was just going to say
yeah,
that.
I literally was like immediately like, what do you want me to do? Should I never go back again? It's like, that's not the real solution.
No.
But at the end of the day, this is don't take your past out on your partner. And what I wanted to share, first of all, Emilia handled that very beautifully. You waited till the next day because you didn't want to concern me, and you knew this was a you issue, not a me issue, right? But the reason why we wanted to share this is because while Emilia handled it beautifully and she was emotionally regulated and she wasn't unkind, I did feel a tiny little bit of caged by that.
After hearing
that was, because it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is my executive admin. I mean, we're friends. Like, it's good. I would never, right? And so in a way, I felt a little bit hurt of the fact that you even think I would consider ever being unfaithful to you. You're my baby. Like, we have the best relationship ever. But at the end of the day, I had to sit back and say, okay, it has nothing to do with me. It has to do with her past traumas. And so this is what happens. You have past traumas. You have people that have hurt you. You get hurt. And unfortunately, you project that hurt sometimes onto your partner unintentionally. And so while Emilia handled that very beautifully, I think that's a great example where if you've ever been insecure in your relationship or you've ever been cheated on, I have many clients who have, I have myself as well. Sometimes you carry that insecurity and that lack of trust into your next relationship, and your partner's like, I've given you no reason for concern. I don't understand what the problem is. And so what's interesting is that can actually help you, that can actually tear apart a relationship, which is then perpetuating the very fear that you were originally scared of.
Yeah.
And so, I wanted to share that story because that's a good example of don't take your past out on your partner because that's going to, if you do what you did in the past, you're going to end up continuously sabotaging your relationship.
Yeah. And I was just going to add that too, babe, because, I think that ultimately, like, that the cycle will continue unless we break that ourselves. Like, say, for example, if I didn't realize that I had run into that issue in the past and I was bringing that insecurity, that honestly trust issues into our relationship.
Would you be willing to share what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, especially because like I didn't know what your relationship was. I had a lot of conditioning around like any sort of working relationship that had any sort of personal experience, like interweaving personal life and work life. For me, it was I had conditioning around personal life is very separate than work life. And for, someone to be over another person's house, for me, that was like, whoa, there's something a little bit off here. So like, based on
now that you know Amy and you've coached Amy,
I've coached Amy. I love Amy. Like, it's
pretty obvious now, right?
It's so obvious now that would never, and that's the thing.
Amy's the sweetest.
She is the sweetest, and that's where my conditioning and all of the belief systems that have been forced down my throat as to like how things are, if person is acting in this way, and this is another component, like, right, like, then that means that they're having an affair or they're doing this or like insert drama here. And it's so evident now, like that's so much of the past has been so drama centric. And like, as a woman, I think that in experiencing the infidelity and in experiencing, my own personal experience with having to navigate through, and I know a lot of women have struggled with this, not just men or women, but men also, like, when you have a partner that is unfaithful or breaks the promises, even if they're not unfaithful, like, and doesn't communicate, say, for example, oh, babe, I was going to be home at 11, and then 1 o'clock rolls around. It's like, oh, okay, immediately our brain, will start to go to catastrophizing that. Especially
in this case, that's not what happened.
No.
Right. So you just kind of realized that this had nothing to do with me, and you therefore didn't want to bother me with it, and waited till the next day, and then you vulnerably communicated the truth of, listen, I just want to express to you that was challenging for me, but I understand this is a me thing, not a us thing, not a we thing.
Absolutely.
And I think that was really well handled.
Thanks, babe.
A little over a year and a half ago, I attended my first relationship call with Alan and Emilia. And as a single mother, I was very curious what I was actually going to be able to take away from it. I was very blown away with how deep we could actually go in that first session alone. It really opened the doors and opened my eyes to a lot of my patterning and wounding around relationships. Through attending some of their live events and through work with them, I have really grown in confidence, in learning how to love and show up for myself, which has been huge. And it's really set the bar high when in terms of standards for relationships and what I desire and need out of a relationship. They very much practice what they preach, and it's so nice to see people working consciously on relationships. Again, it's really set the bar high for what I look for and what I desire in a relationship. So I'm super grateful to be able to learn and grow from them and be a part of this community.
And to that extent, I think that I also had the moment where I knew that it was like, and this is where I know a lot of people struggle with, but like, it's a lot easier to have gotten all of my junk from my past on you. I think it would have been a lot easier to do that, statistically speaking, where we pull our past into our relationship and let that drive, right? One of the reasons why a lot of couples will break up is actually because of the tendrils of their past, right? Because there's not that moment of, I don't want to bring that into our relationship.
Right.
And I don't want that to lead, because when fear is leading in a relationship, it will continuously drive more and more fear. And ultimately, like you said, that can break a couple up. So for me, it was really like, okay, I know this is a me thing, and I really honor and cherish our relationship. I don't want to bring this in. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, because that's not fair if I were to not do that. Just because I've had past male partners that haven't been XYZ for me doesn't mean that that's also who he is. And I think that deep fear and deep insecurity of our past, right? Our past scars, our past traumas, our past whatever, there's so much pain that's underneath that. It's really hard to like love again in that regard and to extend that trust.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a fickle thing, but it can be so deeply powerful for people. Like, and I'm so grateful because I didn't really let that fear lead, and I let that emotional regulation come forward. And I'm grateful for you because you were sweet about it afterwards too,
Of course.
and we tried to figure out and navigate through that. And like I said, we're not perfect in this, but we have seen other couples, struggle to let those wedges continuously lead. And, to the earlier example that I gave, unfortunately, that past did continuously come in emotionally, and this individual wasn't emotionally healed from the past. So working through that emotionally.
The story originally that you opened the podcast with. So not your past. You're talking about that. Yeah. And the client.
Yeah. So not healing from that past, that's, that was emotionally taken out on this partner because it was like suppress all these emotions that I haven't worked through or healed from or handled.
In other words, the ways in which that past partner hurt her continued to perpetuate, and she started to hurt him in the same ways that she was hurt. Yeah. And that's how those cycles happen, right? And the idea here, the metaphor that I like to think of is if you're driving forward into the future, the bright future, looking in the rear view, you're going to crash.
Right.
Now, you can look in the rear view to learn from your past, but not if you just I picture in Jurassic Park, there's a scene in San Diego, Jurassic Park 2, where the T-Rex there's a woman in the rear view, she sees a T-Rex, and so she's just staring in the rear view at the T-Rex, and then she speeds forward, and then she crashes into a bus. It's kind of like that. Yeah. You can't drive forward if you're only ever looking at the fears behind you. And so that's the analogy here. The question that we want you to contemplate, conscious couples and individuals, before we go here, The question I wrote down is, where might you still be taking your past out on your partner unintentionally? So maybe you have trust issues still from your past, or maybe you have been lashed out on or yelled at or something, and that's still happening in your relationship. And so just kind of contemplate that and see what comes up.
Yeah, we oftentimes remember, like, how many of us, find themselves in the situation where we'll remember that one small thing that hurt, like, and that will take precedence over all of the good things that came out of a situation. Like, our brain is so good at doing that for us. And intimate relationships is that much more sensitive to that one thing, right? So like if it was a trust issue or whatever, your brain is already optimized to try to find that one little sliver of evidence that will confirm all of your beliefs that happened in the past in this current relationship. And that's where that self-sabotage, breaking promises comes in a lot. So the question for all of our listeners from me that I want our listeners contemplating is truly like, what painful parts of your past have you not yet healed from? Because likely that's where it's like the fear gremlins are there, and they're like just sitting on the bench ready to be called in. And it's like that one slice of evidence that's going to prove to them that they should be on the field or in the game. Like, that's what can really sabotage a relationship. So
now let's imagine this real quick before we go. Imagine Emilia has that insecurity, that trust issue. Imagine she doesn't emotionally regulate. She takes it out on me. Now I have a past of being controlled and by other people's fears, and I rebel against that. I don't want to be told what I can and can't do. Now all of a sudden her insecurity is even higher, and now I'm triggered thinking I'm going to be caged, and there's a wedge in our relationship. And now we start to grow apart rather than together. See how her trigger and insecurity can trigger my insecurity, and this happens all the time. So this is not a you issue. We like to say this on the Conscious Couples podcast. These issues are not you issues. These are human issues. These are relationship issues. Everyone has different nuances that they deal with, different types of triggers, different types of traumas, but there's no couple that I don't know or that I know of that doesn't take their past out at least a little bit on their partner completely unintentionally, because a lot of this stuff is going on beneath the radar.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to get going here. But first we want to say, so we have not yet picked a topic for Relationship Talks number 22. So we just finished 21. We're going to announce the topic on the next episode, but either way, that's going to be April 13th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As soon as we have a link to register, we actually probably will by the time this episode launches. So check out the link. In the link, it'll have the topic available, and then join us. And those events, again, it's a way to meet other listeners. It's a way to not feel alone in your challenges. It's a way to really just meet other people that are into growth. And that at the Conscious Couples podcast, our core belief of our relationships, what is the purpose of an intimate relationship? The purpose of an intimate relationship is growth. And if that's the case, you're most likely going to learn and grow together, far more likely than growing apart.
And speaking of growing together, not apart, what we find every now and then, we have people that will come to us and will say, like, we have 14 years of history of doing this. Please help solve our problems. Please help us in our relationship. Awesome. We can help you. However, what would be so much better is if before those things got 14-year big wedges would be to start while I like to think of like cements, little cracks in the pavements, before a tree starts growing up out of those, because no one actually put any sort of cement in between to help the cement start to heal. Like, if we were to take a more proactive approach with our intimate relationships, because of that belief system that love should be protected, right? Oftentimes we don't reach out for help until the pain is great enough. And so I want to encourage all of our listeners, if you're struggling in this regard and you find that after contemplating some of these questions, I might be taking my past out on my partner, and I might, oh my gosh, that might be triggering them too, and their past might be taken out on me. The biggest thing here is that you aren't alone. And Alan and I make sure that we allocate 30 minutes on our calendar every single Saturday to our listeners, because we want to meet you and we want you to know that you're not alone. This is a private, free conversation, 30 minutes, and we'll be able to work through some of this stuff. And I guarantee by the end of that, you're going to come out feeling like you have a way forward. You have hope. You have the ability to work through some of those challenges. So that link will also be in the show notes. So please go ahead and click on that, and feel free to show up with your tea, with your slippers on. It's completely judgmental free. space.
We hope to see you on a Saturday morning coming up here soon. Okay, before we go here, thank you again. Again, this episode is Don't Take Your Past Out on Your Partner. Do not do that. This is episode number 57, and we will see you next time on episode 58. 58. Fumbled right at the goal line. We were so close. We were so close. As always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.